She said I'd never be anything. She was wrong. The words still echo in my head every time I step through those glass doors. It's strange how a place can look the same, yet feel completely different. The same polished floor, the same hum of computers, the same faint smell of burned coffee, but this time, the air bends around me differently. I'm not the desperate man walking out with a box in his hands anymore. I'm the one whose name is on the letterhead. The morning rain had left streaks on the windows, and the city outside blurred like an old memory. I stood there in the lobby, watching the elevator numbers rise and fall, and for a moment, I was 28 again, tired, scared, and full of promises I hadn't yet kept. When I walked past the reception desk, the fluorescent lights flickered just like they used to. That tiny flicker, it was the same one that haunted me the day they told me to leave. The same one that burned above me when I told her I'd be back, that I'd prove them all wrong. I remember her laugh, the kind that made you feel smaller, the kind that stayed with you long after she was gone. You'll never be successful, Daniel. You don't have what it takes. That line followed me like a ghost. I carried it through every sleepless night, every rejection, every small victory that never seemed enough. It wasn't her voice anymore, it became mine. But this morning was different. This time, I stood on the other side of the story. The guards nodded, the employees stepped aside. The office I once feared now waited for my permission to open its doors. 10 years ago, they fired me. Today, they called me sir. I should have felt proud, but all I felt was quiet. A calm that didn't need applause. Because this story, it was never about money. It was about what it took to earn it. 10 years earlier, life was different. The mornings smelled of cheap coffee and second-hand hope. The sun would slip through the cracked blinds of our tiny apartment, warming the walls just enough to make them feel like home. The floor creaked, the faucet dripped, and the fan made that clicking sound that never stopped, but back then, those sounds were the rhythm of our life. I used to wake up before her. She liked her coffee with 2 sugars, no cream. I'd make it quietly, place it on the nightstand, and whisper before leaving, "One day, I'll make this all worth it." She'd smile, half asleep, and murmur, "I know you will." And for years, I held on to that voice like it was a promise. I wasn't rich, or confident, or even particularly special. Just another man trying to build something out of nothing. I worked long hours at the office, sometimes 14, 15 a day. I believed every late night would mean a better morning for us. Every extra project, every overtime shift, I told myself it was all for her. For us. When I'd get home, exhausted and drenched in city dust, she'd already have dinner ready. We'd sit on the floor with paper plates, talking about dreams that felt close enough to touch. One day, I'd tell her, "We'll move into a place with real windows, a view, maybe even a balcony." She'd laugh and say, "And I'll have a kitchen where nothing leaks." Those were good days. Days when love felt easy and the world seemed kind. I can still see her, the way she'd sit on the couch in her old sweater, watching me review files late into the night. She'd smile and say, "Keep going, Daniel. You're doing something amazing." I didn't realize it then, but that sentence was slowly turning into a condition. Time has a way of wearing people down. What once felt like support started to sound like expectation. Her laughter became rarer. The small jokes, the gentle touch, they started to fade. The more I tried, the more distant she became, as if my ambition had stopped being admirable and turned into something annoying. Sometimes, when I talk about ideas or promotions, she'd look at me and say, "You work so hard, but are we ever going to see results?" The words stung, but I'd brush them off, tell myself she was just tired. We both were. Still, I loved her. I thought that was enough. I thought effort meant loyalty, and loyalty meant love. I was wrong. Back then, I truly believed she loved me for who I was, but I didn't realize she was falling in love with who I might become. And when that man took too long to arrive, she started looking for the door. It happened on a Thursday, the kind of day that feels harmless until it isn't. The office was quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before a storm. My manager called me in with that practiced tone of concern, the one people use when they already know they're about to ruin your life. I walked in, and there it was, a white envelope on his desk. My name printed neatly on top, like a gravestone. He didn't look at me when he spoke. Daniel, I'm sorry. It's not personal. The company's restructuring. Restructuring. That's what they call it when they erase years of loyalty with a single sentence. I remember nodding, pretending to understand, pretending not to care. My hands were shaking, but I kept them in my pockets. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words refused to come. 10 years of work, swallowed by silence. I walked out with my box of files, my old coffee mug, and a version of myself I no longer recognized. The lights above flickered as I passed, like the building itself was mocking me. The city outside was cold and loud. People rushed past me, faces blurred by rain, none of them noticing the man carrying his own failure home. Every step echoed with her voice in my head, "Keep going, Daniel. You're doing something amazing." But when I opened the door that night, that voice wasn't there anymore. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, her face lit by the blue glow of the screen. I told her everything. Tried to sound calm, optimistic, like it was just a small setback. She looked up, blinked once, and laughed. Not a cruel laugh, but a hollow one. The kind that says everything without words. "You got fired?" she asked. "After all that work? What are we supposed to do now?" I told her it wasn't the end, that I'd find something better. I even smiled when I said it, trying to hold the pieces together. But she didn't smile back. "You'll never make it without them," she said, her voice sharp, final. I stared at her for a long moment, then whispered, "Maybe not today. But someday." That night, she didn't come to bed. I heard her pacing, whispering to someone on the phone, her tone softer than it had been with me in months. I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between each heartbeat. When I finally drifted off, it was to the sound of her suitcase zipping. In the morning, she was gone. The coffee pot was still warm, and on the counter, a note waited for me. "I can't do this anymore." 7 words. No goodbye. No explanation. Just a clean, quiet ending to the only thing I thought I could depend on. I stood there for a long time, staring at that note, the world outside still gray and wet. Something inside me cracked, not loud, not dramatic. Just a small sound, deep and quiet, like a branch giving way under too much weight. That night, when she walked out, something in me broke. But something else woke up. The days after she left were heavy and endless. Mornings blurred into nights, and time became something I stopped keeping track of. I couldn't stay in that apartment, it smelled like her perfume, like everything I had failed to be. So I packed a bag, stuffed some clothes, a few books, and my old laptop inside, and checked into a cheap roadside motel 2 towns away. The kind of place where the walls are thin, the sheets don't match, and the air conditioner rattles like it's fighting to stay alive. It was quiet there, uncomfortably quiet, and for the first time in years, no one expected anything from me. No deadlines, no love, no validation. Just silence. At first, I couldn't sleep. I'd sit by the window, staring at the rain sliding down the glass, listening to cars hum past on the wet road. I'd replay every conversation in my head, every time she told me to work harder, every look that said I wasn't enough. The pain turned into noise, and the noise turned into focus. If they were right about me, I had nothing left to lose by proving them wrong. Days became a routine. I'd wake before sunrise, make cheap coffee, open my laptop, and start learning. Anything I could. Marketing. Finance. Sales. I devoured books until the words blurred together. I'd take freelance gigs that barely paid, write reports for strangers, build small things online just to see if they worked. Most didn't. But every failure taught me something. Every rejection became fuel. I kept that old photo of her on the nightstand for months. Her smile used to make me feel warm. Now it just made me feel small. One night, after another failed pitch, I picked it up. The frame cracked when it fell from my hand, a clean fracture right through her face. I stared at it for a long time, feeling that old version of me staring back. The man who wanted her approval. The man who needed to be seen. I tore the photo in half, placed it in the motel ashtray, and lit a match. The paper curled, blackened, and vanished. I watched the flames until there was nothing left but quiet. That night felt different. It was like I buried someone I'd outgrown. From that moment, I stopped thinking about her, about them, about proving anything. I started thinking about building. Not out of anger anymore, but purpose. I built websites, small businesses, anything that would move. I failed again and again, but slowly, the failures got smaller and the wins got bigger. The seasons changed. The motel became an office. The office became a team. The team became a company. I stopped noticing the rain. I stopped needing the noise. My voice changed when I spoke, calmer, clearer, deliberate. The kind of tone that comes when you finally know who you are. Years later, I stood by that same motel window, watching the sunrise for the first time in a long while. The light hit differently that day. It wasn't blinding. It was gentle. I took a deep breath and smiled, not because I'd made it, but because I wasn't chasing anymore. They had taken everything from me, my job, my pride, my love. But in their absence, I had built something they could never touch. Myself. Success didn't arrive with applause. It came quietly, almost shyly, like the dawn creeping through curtains after a long storm. By the time people noticed, it was already too late to stop it. What started as a side hustle in a rundown motel room had turned into something real, something alive. My company grew faster than I could process. One client became 10, 10 became hundreds, and before long, I was signing contracts with people who once ignored my emails. Every milestone came with a strange stillness, a peace that didn't feel like victory, just confirmation that the pain had been worth it. Years passed, and the name they had forgotten became one they whispered again. I didn't seek attention, I didn't need validation. But then, one morning, I received a call from a familiar voice. My old company was collapsing. Profits down, leadership fractured, shareholders panicking. They wanted to sell. I remember sitting at my desk, staring at the skyline, letting that sentence hang in the air. The same firm that had tossed me aside like I was nothing now needed me to save it. I didn't laugh. I didn't gloat. I just said, schedule a meeting. Walking into that building again was surreal. The same polished floor, same smell of burnt coffee, same flickering light in the hallway. The receptionist, probably too young to know who I was, straightened up as I passed. "Good morning, Mr. Harris," she said, her voice slightly nervous. For a moment, I felt the ghost of my old self walking beside me, the man with the box, the man they humiliated. But that version was long gone. When I stepped into the boardroom, everything went quiet. My old boss was there, older now, smaller somehow. The man who once told me I wasn't leadership material could barely meet my eyes. He stood up, smiled weakly, and extended his hand. "Daniel, it's been a long time." I nodded, sitting across from him. "It has." The air was thick, heavy with years of unspoken words. I glanced at the papers on the table, numbers, signatures, the price of pride. "You know," I said softly, "I remember this room. I remember packing my things right outside that door." He tried to speak, but his voice cracked. I kept mine steady. "You told me I'd never make it without this company. Maybe you were right. I didn't make it without it. I made it because of it." No one said a word after that. I signed the papers, slid the pen back toward him, and watched the realization settle in. Everything he had built was now in my hands. Everything they took from me, I had rebuilt in silence. I stood up, ready to leave, but then I saw her. She was standing near the door, frozen. My ex-wife. She worked there now, apparently. A consultant. Time had softened her face but not her expression. It was still that mix of curiosity and guilt she used to wear when she didn't know what to say. "Daniel," she whispered, almost a question. I turned, calm. "You said I'd never be successful." Her eyes glistened, the silence between us louder than any argument we'd ever had. I waited, then added, "I didn't come back to prove you wrong. I came back to thank you." She blinked, confusion flickering across her face. "Thank me?" I smiled, small and quiet. If you hadn't left, I might have stayed the man you thought I was." Her lips parted like she wanted to reply, but no words came out. I looked around the room once more, the same walls that had once watched me fail, and felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Not triumph, not revenge, just peace. I walked to the window, staring down at the city that had chewed me up and spit me out, and said softly to myself, "Funny how life works, isn't it?" The sky outside was gold, the sun hitting the buildings like forgiveness. I turned back to them, nodded once, and headed for the door. That day, I learned something I'd never understood before. Revenge doesn't have to roar. It doesn't have to scream for attention. Real revenge is quiet. It's calm. It's when you no longer need to be seen by the people who once ignored you. That day, I realized, revenge isn't loud. It's silent and graceful. After that day, the noise of life started to fade. The meetings, the deals, the headlines, it all felt distant, like an echo I no longer needed to chase. I would sit by my office window sometimes, watching the city move beneath me, the same streets that once felt cruel and endless. Everything looked the same, yet nothing felt the same. I had climbed the mountain I once stared at with trembling hands, and standing on top, I realized how quiet it was up there. Owning that company didn't make me happy. It didn't fill the emptiness she left behind or erase the nights I spent wondering if I'd ever be enough. Success fixed my circumstances, but it didn't fix me. What it did was teach me that peace isn't found in winning, it's found in letting go. I used to think revenge was about proving people wrong. But when I saw their faces that day, my old boss, my ex-wife, the people who doubted me, I didn't feel the rush I expected. I didn't feel anger. I just felt done. Complete. Free. I started spending more time alone after that. Fewer meetings, fewer distractions. I walked to work some mornings, no suit, no phone in hand, just me and the sound of my footsteps. I'd pass people rushing to catch buses, phones pressed to their ears, faces tight with stress, and I'd wonder if I used to look like that. Maybe I did. Maybe we all do before life slows us down. Sometimes I'd pass that old building, the one I first worked in, the one where it all started. The lights still burned late at night, just like before. Inside, I'd see young versions of myself, men and women staying after hours, desperate to be seen, to be chosen, to be remembered. I wanted to walk in and tell them something I wish someone had told me. That the world will try to measure you by its own timeline, and when you fall behind, it will whisper that you failed. But it's lying. Growth doesn't follow a clock. Healing doesn't either. I heard, months later, that she moved away. A different city, a different life. I didn't ask where. I didn't need to know. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't anything anymore when it came to her. Just calm. Because I finally understood, what she took from me wasn't love, it was dependence. And what I built in its place was strength. One evening, as the sun began to sink behind the skyline, I stood in front of the window, my reflection faint against the glass. The city lights flickered on one by one, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to keep climbing. I closed my eyes and let the quiet settle in. In the end, I didn't win because I became rich. I won because I found peace. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't a victory anyone else can see. It's the simple, silent act of outgrowing the people who once broke you.